What happens when a rewilded cougar risks her life to protect a helpless fawn, only to be called a threat by the people she saved it from? What the wild did next turned everything upside down. They said she wouldn't last a week out here. Too soft, too tame, too used to humans spoon-feeding her and wiping her mess like she was some sort of zoo princess. Yeah, they said a lot of things about Ira the cougar when the sanctuary finally released her into the wild. A rewilding program, they called it. As if throwing a cat into a death jungle made them heroes. As if she was supposed to just shake off years of concrete floors and cage bars and suddenly become queen of the mountain. Guess what? She didn't. She didn't become queen. She didn't fight for territory. She didn't even hunt like the others. She stuck to the edges of the cliffs, away from the packs, away from the big boys with their thunder paws and bloody jaws. She watched. She listened. She survived. Until that morning. The forest was thick with fog. It clung to the trees like a secret. Ira moved, slow, silent, not because she was stalking, but because her ribs still hurt from the last time another cougar chased her off a carcass. A dirty fight over dead rabbit. That's the kind of bottom-rung life she'd been living. Then she heard it. A tiny sound. Not a growl, not a chirp. It was crying. The kind of sound no predator wants to admit tugs at something in the gut. It came from behind a fallen log, where dew pooled and flies buzzed like gossipers. And there he was, a fawn. So small, it looked like someone had just folded it out of paper. Legs too long for his body, ears twitching like broken antennas. His chest pulsed so fast it almost looked still, alone, vulnerable, fresh. Now let's be honest, most wild cats wouldn't blink. Easy meal, one pounce and done. But Ira wasn't most cats. She looked at him. He looked at her. And for a moment, something cracked. Not a bone, something older, something buried. She stepped forward. He flinched. Then she did something no textbook ever trained her for. She laid down beside him. No, not to trap him, not to lure him in, just to be there. He curled into her belly, trembling. She didn't purr. She didn't lick. She just stared at the horizon like she was waiting for a punch. And right on cue, it came. The ground didn't shake. It rippled. That's how big the thing was. A massive python, thick as a fire hose and twice as mean, slid out of the brush like it owned the place. Its tongue flicked, tasting air that now reeked of panic. Ira didn't move. She didn't breathe. This wasn't just danger. This was death wearing scales. The snake didn't care that she was a cougar. Didn't care that the fawn was a baby. All it saw was meat. And Ira, she was in the way. She stood, slowly, planted herself between the monster and the kid. You'd think this would be the part where she roars. Claws out, hero moment. Nope. She hesitated. Just 1 second too long. That was enough. The python lunged like a freight train with teeth. It wrapped around her midsection before she could blink. Her ribs screamed. Her back paw twisted at an angle that should never exist. The pressure, it was like her body was being erased. She yowled, not in rage, in pure animal terror. The fawn squeaked behind her, frozen, and still, she didn't run, couldn't. The python began to pull tighter, her vision blurred. Was this it? After everything she fought through, cages, exile, hunger, it was going to end with her bones cracking under a living rope? Somewhere deep inside her, something snapped into place. A memory. A man's hand, warm on her fur, whispering, "You're not broken. You're just not done yet." And then, not yet. We're not there yet. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how this turns around. They say nature doesn't play favorites. Sure. Tell that to the python squeezing the breath out of her while the forest watched like a lazy referee. Ira wasn't just losing this fight. She was vanishing in it. With every twist of that scaly monster, her lungs gave less. Her vision narrowed to pinholes. And somewhere in the back of her mind, one very blunt thought rang out. This is how they'll remember me. A half-wild cat who tried to be better and ended up as brunch. But fate, it turns out, has a messed-up sense of timing. From the trees behind them, something growled. Low, mean. Not the kind of sound you run toward unless you've got a badge or a death wish. The python paused. So did Ira. Then, boom. Out from the brush came another cougar. Bigger, older, pure wilderness from nose to tail. The kind that makes ranchers double-lock their barns and other predators give way. Her name was Naoma, and unlike Ira, Naoma didn't hesitate. She hit the python like thunder on legs. No warning, no circling, just claws first, straight into the coils. The snake reared back, letting go of Ira just long enough for her to collapse onto the ground like a deflated balloon. She gasped once, then twice, like a drowning swimmer finally breaking the surface. Naoma didn't stop. She was fast, but not reckless. Her teeth went for the soft parts. Her paws pinned down whatever they could find. And for the first time, the python had to figure out something it clearly wasn't used to: losing. Ira tried to stand. Bad idea. Her leg buckled instantly, but she crawled, not away, toward the fawn. He was still there, shaking, staring, alive. She curled her body around him again, shielding him with what little strength she had left. Above them, the forest had turned into a battlefield. Naoma roared, not some noble sound from a documentary, but a raw, guttural, get-off-my-turf kind of scream. And the python, bleeding, coiling, failing, finally got the message. It retreated. Not like a coward, more like a sore loser with one eye on revenge. Naoma stood over it, daring it to try again. But here's where things took a turn no one saw coming. A voice. Human. Over here! Something's moving! Boots, radios, flashlights. Not the casual kind. These were patrols, rangers. And one of them? A guy named Jason, young, sharp, and the only human on this mountain who'd once bottle-fed a cougar cub named Ira. He saw her and froze. Ira? No way! The other rangers raised their weapons. Naoma stepped between them and Ira without a sound. Not aggressive, just present. But you could feel it. Tension, like stretched wire. One wrong twitch, and this standoff was going sideways. Jason held up a hand. Nobody shoot. That cougar's not just any wild cat. A grumble from the others. You serious? There's a fawn. Blood. A second cat. This smells wrong. And sure, from their side, it probably did. 2 apex predators standing over a baby deer? Yeah, looked bad. But what no one could explain was why Ira, banged up and limping, wasn't running. Why the fawn was still breathing. Why Naoma wasn't charging, but watching them like a disappointed teacher waiting for someone to do the right thing. Jason stepped forward, slowly. He pointed to Ira's scars, the faint tracking tag still clinging to her back leg, the camera around his neck blinking green. I have footage. She protected him. That python was the threat. The rangers didn't lower their weapons. Not yet. But they didn't fire either. Because somewhere in their heads, something was starting to itch. Doubt. Then the yelling started. Hikers. Locals. A couple of so-called volunteers with binoculars and too many opinions. They're killers. They're not from this territory. You let one go, next week it's livestock. No one mentioned that it was their broken fences and trash piles that lured predators in. No one brought up the hunting zones pushed right to the edge of this protected valley. Convenient. Naoma didn't flinch. She stood tall, calm. And Ira? She looked up from the dirt and locked eyes with Jason. And in that moment, no one needed subtitles to understand what she was thinking. I did what you taught me. Now it's your turn. This is it. The next moment will decide everything. Stick around to see how justice, wild and human, gets served. Let's get something straight. In a perfect world, this would have ended with applause, A warm sunset, and everyone hugging like it was some inspirational animal documentary. But this wasn't a movie. This was real, loud, messy, and one wrong breath away from becoming a very public disaster. The Fawn still shivered under Ira's torn side, her breath coming in tight, broken gasps. Jason stood in the middle like a man caught between a wildfire and a landslide, trying to make two forces see eye to eye. The Rangers were twitchy. The so-called wildlife volunteers in the background? Worse. They weren't here to protect. They came for a show, and now that they saw two cougars and a deer in one frame, they wanted a villain. Naoma didn't blink. She held her ground like a statue built by survival itself. She wasn't snarling. She wasn't threatening. But everything about her screamed, "One more step, and you'll regret it." And here came the moment. A volunteer, older guy, loud boots, louder mouth, decided he'd had enough of the let's wait and see routine. He pushed forward. "You want another child dragged off a trail? You gonna wait until that thing rips up a ranger?" Jason turned, hand raised. "Back off, Frank. You don't know what you're talking about." Frank scoffed. "You city kids think you can cuddle wildlife into behaving. Newsflash. It's a killer. Always will be." Wrong. Dead wrong. But you know how some folks talk so loud they can't hear logic even if it bit them? Ira, battered and bleeding, still didn't budge. She pulled the Fawn a little closer, tail twitching. Not from fear, but from focus. Her eyes tracked every step, every word, and you could almost hear the thought running through her head. "You people brought cages." "I brought proof." Jason didn't argue anymore. He walked straight to the center, turned his camera to the crowd, and pressed play. The footage rolled. Ira discovering the Fawn, the python striking, her taking the hit, Naoma saving them both. You could hear a pin drop. One of the younger rangers whispered, "She protected it." Another murmured, "They worked together." The tension cracked, and then, out of nowhere, an unexpected voice broke through. Old Man Lyle, retired rancher, been hunting these woods longer than most folks had been alive. Everyone knew his rule. Predators die first. But even he stepped forward, stared at the screen, then at Ira and said, "I never thought I'd say this. But maybe we've been shooting at the wrong things." Now that landed like a punch to the ribs. The loud mouths lost their volume. Jason stepped back, letting the silence settle like dust after a storm. One by one, weapons lowered. The ranger captain finally spoke. "We'll monitor her. No relocations, no removals, no bullets." And just like that, the crowd turned, from suspicion to silence, from hostility to respect. Not because Ira begged for it, not because Naoma fought for it, but because the truth had teeth, and it bit through the noise. Naoma gave Ira one long look, not a nod, not a gesture, just understanding. Then, without ceremony, she turned and disappeared into the woods like a shadow that had done its part. Ira stayed. She didn't run. She couldn't even if she wanted to. But she didn't need to. Jason knelt beside her, still careful, still respectful. "You've earned this land, girl. Don't let anyone take it from you again." The Fawn nuzzled under her chest. Still alive, still here. In the days that followed, the video went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. It shattered the old narrative. It showed something raw and rare, that even apex predators could make a choice that defied everything we thought we knew. Ira became a symbol, not of domestication or defiance, but of balance, of a life that didn't need to conquer to survive, of standing your ground even when the world decides you're the villain before you've said a word. And that valley? It wasn't just protected land anymore, it was hers. Not all heroes stand tall. Some crawl, bleed, and protect what isn't theirs to gain respect that was never freely given. But they fight anyway, and they change everything. Thank you for staying through to the end. This story wasn't just survival, it was proof that wild doesn't mean heartless.